When it comes to personal defense, it's important that we know and understand the 4 categories of personal defense. Do you know what they are? I'll teach you all about them in this episode of Tactical Tidbits. Hey friends, Herman Morris from Alpha One Tactical here. Wanted to discuss a concept that we teach at Personal Defense Readiness, and that I think is very important for people to kind of understand at a conceptual level what it is that we're trying to achieve with what we teach, and also just in general what personal defense really is, okay? And so if we categorize these different areas or arenas of personal defense, it helps us get a clear view of what it is that we're trying to achieve. So let me start with the first category, which is martial arts. Most people, especially people that aren't in the martial arts or personal defense or any of that in those worlds, usually their mind goes to martial arts. If you say personal defense or self-defense, they say, okay, martial arts. Why? Because they go back hundreds, sometimes even thousands of years. Basically what categorizes or characterizes martial arts are that they have a long lineage. They're oftentimes underpinned by, you know, spirituality or a certain type of philosophy or approach to life, bigger worldview, even though there are some martial arts that are mostly just about the fighting aspect, but there's a lot of things in between. Okay, so then what's the second category? Well, now you have combat sports. Now, think of something like boxing, right? There's no spirituality or bigger worldview or anything. It's just about the competition and the combat, just about the fight. Now, there are some martial arts that kind of straddle both categories. I think of Muay Thai, which just started as a martial art, and it's a huge combat sport as well. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has also become a huge combat sport, not just a martial art. And then there's a lot of things in between that also kind of straddle both fences here, and or straddle the fence. And but what's important to understand is in both of these cases or these categories, we have consent by all participants. They all agree to be there. They all agree that they're going to trying to pummel each other, that where there's going to be a victor, there's going to be someone that's going to be defeated at any time. A referee can, you know, jump in and stop the fight, or, you know, whatever. There are rules. It is basically a consensual scenario where people agree to show up and compete, and there are specific rules about what you can do, what you can't do. There's referees, there's judges, there's usually people watching. So I guess, you know, most of you understand how this works. Okay, so what's the third category? The third category are real world self-defense systems. So probably the one that would come to mind to most people, you know, when I mention that, is probably something like Krav Maga, and probably something like the spear system or personal defense readiness, which is what we teach at Alpha One. And these essentially, these are systems in which it's not just about a certain lineage or pedigree or going back thousands of years or having a specific, you know, spirituality around it, or philosophy even per se, even though there is some philosophy. There's more psychology than there is philosophy in these things. But they're mostly about practical, real-world techniques to protect yourself out in the real world, as opposed to techniques that are going to, you know, win you matches or, you know, competitions and all that kind of stuff. So it's mostly scenario-based, and again, wholly realistic, and it's not about necessarily athleticism or strength or any of those things that might be necessary for someone who is in martial arts or combat sports. Okay, so you have those three. Okay, so then what's the fourth? Well, the fourth category is the actual real violent encounter in real life. Okay, so now if you think about that, then you have the other three categories where we always had consent to one degree or another, right? We had rules, we had a whole bunch of different things that make things extremely different than the fourth category of the real violent encounter, where there is no consent, right? If you find yourself in a violent encounter with someone that is attacking you against your will, is trying to impose their will on you, and is ready, willing, and able to harm you, okay? we do almost everything we can in the previous three categories to avoid that, right? So if we understand that in those other categories, we are very limited in how we can mimic an actual real world, real life violent encounter, we understand that there's going to be certain limitations, certain things that we just can't do when we're training. So being aware of that, we should want to focus on things that are mostly in the third category of real world self-defense systems, in which we are trying to mimic the real world as much as possible, okay? And that we don't have to contend with all of the other stuff that surrounds the first two, martial arts and combat sports. That doesn't mean that the skills that one learns in martial arts and combat sports can't transfer over to the third or fourth. It just means that we're now dealing with more complex motor skills, which makes it that it's wholly training dependent for people to become adept at those moves, skills, etc. Right? So there's a lot more that can be said about that, but start thinking about, about that concept and what it means to you. And if you're understanding where all of these things fall when it comes to your personal safety, personal defense in general, and come learn more about this in person in one of our classes, Personal Defense Readiness, you can check out our class schedule at alpha1tactical.com. I'd love to meet you in person. Take care.